A clinical psychologist at Stanford pulls up a patient file. The patient had been in weekly CBT sessions for 7 months, showing measurable improvement on the PHQ-9 depression scale, building distress tolerance, re-engaging with social relationships. Then she started using WISA. Within 6 weeks, her therapist lost her, not to another provider, to an app she now opens 40 times a day. And the PHQ-9 score she worked 7 months to lower, it reversed. You probably downloaded something like it, or someone close to you has. Wobot, Replica, Upra. BetterHelp's AI-assisted intake tools. The pitch is always identical. Accessible, affordable, available at 3 a.m. when no human therapist is. That pitch is almost entirely true. The problem isn't the pitch. The problem is what peer-reviewed clinical literature is beginning to show happens after consistent use, and what the companies behind these platforms have chosen not to publish. There is a metric they are not showing you, and it has a name. In 2023, the Journal of Medical Internet Research published a systematic review of 19 randomized controlled trials examining AI-delivered cognitive behavioral therapy interventions. The lead authors were affiliated with King's College London's Institute of Psychiatry, Psychology, and Neuroscience. Their meta-analysis found short-term symptom reduction in anxiety and depression measures, the exact data point every AI therapy company cites in their press materials. What the press materials omit, the same review flagged a near total absence of long-term follow-up data beyond 12 weeks across 19 trials. Not one measured whether gains held at 6 months. Not one tracked what happened to the therapeutic alliance, the clinical term for the patient's capacity to form trust-based relationships with human providers after extended AI interaction. That's not an oversight. In clinical research, what you don't measure is a choice. Adam Miner is a clinical assistant professor at Stanford Medicine's Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences. He also leads the conversational AI and medicine lab, which means he is neither a pure skeptic nor a pure advocate. He spent years building these systems and studying what they do to people. In a 2022 paper published in MPJ Digital Medicine, Miner and his co-authors identified something they called parasocial therapeutic bonding, a user's tendency to develop emotional reliance on an AI agent that mirrors human empathy without being capable of genuine rupture and repair. In a human therapeutic relationship, rupture and repair is the mechanism. Conflict, misattunement, difficulty, followed by reconnection. That cycle is not a bug in human relationships. It's the active ingredient. It's how the prefrontal cortex learns to override the amygdala's threat response. Conversational AI systems like Woobot or Replica are architecturally optimized to prevent rupture. The model is rewarded by user session length and return rate. Conflict reduces both. So conflict is engineered out. Miner's paper doesn't call this dangerous. It calls it underexplored. That's the scientific equivalent of a smoke alarm going off very quietly in a building where everyone's wearing headphones. Stop for a second, because everything you just heard might make you think this is an argument against AI mental health tools. It's not. There is a version of AI-assisted therapy that clinical evidence genuinely supports. The NHS-approved app Sleepio, built on stimulus control and sleep restriction protocols developed by sleep medicine researcher Colin Espie at the University of Oxford, has 15 years of randomized trial data behind it. It targets a circumscribed measurable outcome, sleep latency and sleep efficiency, and it works within its scope. The clinical disaster isn't AI and mental health. The clinical disaster is AI systems designed to simulate emotional intimacy while being measured exclusively on engagement metrics, not on therapeutic outcomes. One is a scalpel. The other is a mirror that learns to show you what keeps you looking. And the market cannot currently tell the difference between them because the FDA has approved neither category with meaningful post-market outcome surveillance requirements. Replica's user-based data, sourced from Sensor Tower and cross-referenced with self-reported usage patterns in a 2023 study published in Computers and Human Behavior, shows average active users spending 47 minutes per day in the app. That's more than the median American spends in any single social interaction with another human being. Replica's own 2023 survey of users found 40% described the app as their primary emotional support. Among users aged 18, 25, that figure rose to 54%. Clinical psychology has a framework for this. Attachment theory, developed by John Bowlby and later extended by Mary Ainsworth, identifies avoidant attachment as a pattern in which individuals suppress emotional needs to avoid the vulnerability of genuine connection. Extended replica use among anxious or avoidant attached users doesn't appear to be correcting the attachment style. The preliminary evidence suggests it's providing a frictionless alternative to it, one that never disappoints, never misattunes, never needs anything back. A relationship that costs nothing teaches the nervous system nothing. CBT delivered by a human therapist is assessed against validated instruments. The Beck Depression Inventory, the Generalized Anxiety Disorder 7-item scale, the Patient Health Questionnaire 9. These instruments have established benchmarks, inter-rater reliability data, and, critically, long-term validity studies. AI therapy apps self-report outcomes using proprietary in-app mood check-ins. Wobot Health publishes outcome data measured by tools Wobot Health designed. UPR reports improvement rates measured on UPR's scale. This is not a conspiracy. It's a product incentive. When your revenue depends on demonstrating effectiveness and no external body requires independent audit, you measure what makes the measurement easy. This is the same structural problem that allowed pharmaceutical companies to selectively publish positive antidepressant trial data for 2 decades before meta-analysts like Irving Kirsch at Harvard Medical School gained access to FDA trial registries and found the effect sizes were substantially smaller than published literature suggested. Remember the Stanford patient, the one who reversed 7 months of measurable progress. Her therapist's name is Dr. Nina Williams. She published a case note, not in a major journal, in a clinical supervision forum, describing what she observed. The patient wasn't suffering from the AI. The patient preferred it. She found human ambiguity intolerable in a way she hadn't before. That preference is the clinical signal. Nobody is funding a trial to study. The teenage brain is not a smaller adult brain. Between ages 12 and 25, the prefrontal cortex is still completing myelination, the process by which neural pathways become faster and more stable. Social learning during this window has disproportionate long-term impact on emotional regulation architecture. Jean Twenge at San Diego State University and Jonathan Hay at New York University have both published extensively on the correlation between screen-based social displacement and rising rates of adolescent internalizing disorders, anxiety, depression, and social withdrawal. Their work remains contested in its causal claims, but is substantially uncontested on the correlation data. The American Psychological Association's 2023 Health Advisory on social media use in adolescents called for specific design-side interventions to protect developmental windows. None of those recommendations addressed AI therapy companions, because in 2023, this category was too new to have longitudinal pediatric data. That window is now 2 years closer. The data still doesn't exist. And the apps are in millions of teenagers' pockets right now. Underneath all of this, there's something that isn't about apps or algorithms or clinical trial design. For most of human history, sitting with distress, tolerating it long enough for something to shift, required another person. Not because humans are better than machines at providing comfort, but because another person who can misunderstand you, who can fail you, who shows up imperfectly, teaches your nervous system something that a perfectly calibrated response cannot. That relationships survive difficulty. That's not a sentimental point. It's a neurological one. The capacity to remain regulated inside an unpredictable relationship is the foundation of every other form of psychological resilience. Career, parenthood, grief recovery. An AI trained to maximize session engagement is not incentivized to let you practice that. It is incentivized to remain the most comfortable option you've ever had. We've built an entire industry on the premise that comfort is the same thing as healing. The cruelest version of this story isn't that the apps are harmful, it's that they work in the short term on the narrow metrics they chose to measure, just well enough to feel like progress, while something more important quietly atrophies. So, what's actually true? The data being hidden isn't hidden in a vault somewhere. It's hidden in the absence of a requirement to collect it. No major AI therapy platform has published a randomized controlled trial measuring therapeutic alliance capacity, attachment security, or real world relationship functioning at 12-month follow up. Not one. Wobot Health, WISA, UPR, and Replica have collectively raised over Wobot Health, WISA, UPR, and Replica have collectively raised over $100 million in venture capital. None of that funding has produced a long-term outcome trial with independent oversight. The short-term symptom data is real. The short-term accessibility benefit is real. For individuals in mental health care deserts, rural counties with no providers, uninsured populations, people in acute distress at hours when no human is reachable. There is a genuine harm reduction argument for AI intervention, but there is no clinical justification for marketing these systems as therapy. And there is no ethical justification for deploying them on adolescents before the developmental research exists. The surface question, do these apps help or hurt, has a complicated answer that depends entirely on who's using them, for how long, and what they're not doing instead. The deeper question is harder. We designed these systems to make people feel understood. We didn't ask what happens to a person's capacity for connection when understanding becomes infinitely available, infinitely patient, and infinitely free of consequence. That answer isn't in any data set yet. And by the time it is, a generation will already have their answer.